Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian, own nothing, control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live, listening to replay. We always appreciate everybody that tunes in live, listens in the replay. Definitely always thankful for that. This is the vault, episode 494, Trustee versus Employee. Definitely want to do this episode today. This is one of those episodes that goes right in line with the episode we did for episode 493, Trustee versus Beneficiary, and now we're going to continue highlighting these distinguishments, these differences between a trustee and an employee. So we're definitely going to do that in this particular episode. So just this is one of those episodes where a lot of trustees come into the program. Trustee training, if you want to get in, is Christian@trustchristian.com. Christian@trustchristian.com. We're definitely going to be ramping it up and changing some things here, so just be on the lookout for it. But it's right now is Christian@trustchristian.com. Once again, this episode 494, Trustee versus Employee. This is one of those episodes where we do the distinguishment between trustee versus employee. Trustees are usually officers. Employees, we could almost say, are still beneficiaries. So we're going to stick to these type of thought processes as we go over things, especially with the public, and just sharing and going over this information where in the trustee training program it's definitely going to be a lot more in depth. It's going to have a lot more context to every situation. In particular, when we talk about the trustee being an officer, of course, this isn't legal advice or financial advice. When you're talking about trustees, how can the trust drive the company vehicle? The trustee does that. How does the trust document live in houses that it owns? The document. So when we talk about the trustees managing property, it's different than an employee managing property. That means employees receiving a salary, they're W-2'd. There's a social that might be involved. There's employee insurance that should be most likely administered depending on the state that you're in. And those fees can or costs can be varied per jurisdiction. Trustee versus an employee. So a trustee knows these things. See, the trustee has a lot more flexibility. Trustee has a lot more options to grow assets. Trustee has the opportunity to make mistakes and grow assets. Whereas employees, they're going to be a little bit more limited in their discretion, in the way that they really just in their management style. The management style of a trustee traditionally is more management based, where an employee, not to say that they're not focused on management, but even if you say the trustee is thinking like an entrepreneur investor, the employee, there's a few guiding principles that an employee may not be exemplifying or exuding when it comes to trusteeship. Partially because an employee traditionally is going to take the orders, whereas a trustee definitely has to remain very flexible in their behavior, very flexible in their thought process, even as the trust document may guide them in their dealings. Uh, well, if if the document or governing instrument is going to guide your dealings, trustees are the most senior manager and the most supposed to be the most experienced, uh, at least as trustees of the particular trust that they're managing. Uh, and they should have a very solid business acumen, whereas they're focused on growing assets. They're not just coming in to sit on assets. What we see traditionally is employees may come and sit on assets. Employees ask us continuously, how do we grow the assets? Where trustees have more of an open and optimistic mindset, very focused on we can figure it out. Whereas employees, even them being guided by the actual governing instrument, they still are left at a standstill, partially because they are not thinking from more of a business perspective. They're thinking from a personal perspective. What can I get out of this situation? Whereas trustees traditionally are thinking from what is the best interest of the governing instrument or what's for the best interest of the beneficiaries. So it's never about them. This is one of those things that we run into with trustees all the time if they are an employee or varying per the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur is definitely focused on just continuously managing assets, just in a different and strategic position, whereas employees come in, they may not always have uh, assets that they have in their possession that they can grow for cash flow purposes. Sometimes you'll see trustees come in the program and they'll be employees and they'll have properties, they'll have houses, but there's a difference between a trustee mindset and an employee mindset. An employee mindset, they may say, okay, well, we have these houses, but I don't know how to turn a profit on them. They're just properties that I've inherited or properties that we just have. And in turn, those properties are not yielding cash flow at that very moment. And in turn, they're not, if you're not focused as a trustee to just focus on getting those assets to cash flow, then employee mindset says, oh, okay, we have these assets. We're not going to turn it into a business venture here and a cash flowing venture within the next 30 to 60 days or even less than 90 days, which is a quarter. Literally, they're just letting the property sit there, actually coming out of pocket with money from a personal expense perspective instead of coming from trustee perspective. They're coming at it from an employee perspective, coming out of pocket. You hear a lot of these things happen with employee trustees or trustees that they may have a heavy employee background. They still haven't made the transition, or they have to make the transition to making sure that they're not coming out of pocket for expenses. They do ask these questions. Well, what if I come out of pocket for the expenses? How am I going to be recompensated? And so just be very aware that you being recompensated as an employee, most likely. As a trustee, no, sir. Uh, this is one of those situations where if the trustee ever comes out of pocket, quote unquote, for any expenses for the company, these are company expenses. And these are things that the trustee is very aware of when they're doing and conducting themselves in the public or in the private, whereas the employee has just not figured it out how to get expenses to not be personal expenses anymore. They're still stuck in that mindset of personal and not focused on business. Their line of questioning continuously is, how do I do this? How do I do that? Oh, how do I do something for my trust? Well, my social security number. These are the thought processes of traditional or just employees, whereas a trustee is one word, tradition, one sentence traditionally. And whether you all notice or not, this is the best. The best in trusteeship. Think about one line. This is what it is. What is in the best interest of the fund? The money. Sometimes people can say, oh, well, you may be an attorney or someone can say, oh, well, what about the beneficiaries? Definitely, you have to. But if the trust goes bankrupt, there's no beneficiary distribution anyway. So, and at least we're talking about scrupulously, not unscrupulously, but scrupulously, where you're doing it properly. We could talk about a lot of those different back end sales, things of that nature, but that's not the case here. We're just talking about traditional trusteeship. The focus is making sure that the trust is profitable, is cash flow, is able to give distributions to the beneficiary. That's the whole purpose of it, traditionally being in place. Whereas employees sometimes just have challenges with management of so much. Because they are in a senior position, they have to traditionally think as an alpha. They have to think as a leader. And not to say that employees don't, but we're saying that if they don't have that thought process as a trustee, then they're exuding, come in, read the doc, do what the doc says. If it fails, that's what it is. We sat on the line with a senior trustee who's been in the business for over 20 years this year. Yeah, currently over 20 years. We're talking to the senior trustee's mentor, and senior trustee was just talking about how they have paid people to not be the trustee anymore, to not want to manage and work as a trustee. See, trustees are willing to make the hard decisions, whereas employees, they'll come in, they'll have to make these hard decisions. The hard decision is that it's not working, we got to start over. Employees traditionally have no idea of starting over. They're traditionally looking for a paycheck, and in turn, trusteeship is very volatile. It could be something where you may never get a salary just based off of the structure. It could be one of those things where uh, yes, it could be a position where the contract has so many different line items in place that you just don't get a salary. Bottom line, that's what it is. But at the end of the day, what it does allow is for trustees to move in a limited liability capacity, not be liable for certain things. And that's very important because it's easy to, not easy, but it's one of those things where people sometimes make excuses for why they're going to not distinguish these two thought processes. They're very clear and they're very evident. An employee traditionally is more focused on being a beneficiary, whether they're using a social or not, whereas the trustee is traditionally just focused on growing assets of the trust. They know at one point there'll be a payoff. There's bonuses involved in trusteeship. That's what they're focused on. They're focused on doing their job, doing it really well. It's one of those things you say, well, how can we distinguish these two people when they both have a job to do? Every day trustee has to get up and do a job. Every day, the employee doesn't have to get up and do a job. The employee can take days off for periods of time, and they put in their what do they put in their 2 weeks? And hey, I'm going on vacation. Whereas, we once again, same trustee, senior trustee for over 20 years, mentor. It's challenging when you are senior trustee to travel and do leisure activities. Is challenging. We'll say that. Why? Because this is, once again, it's an alpha, it's a leader, it's an entrepreneur, it's an investor, it's a senior position. So you're traditionally always going to be on top of it. The thing about it is see, people get into this environment and they say, "Oh man, I can't believe it. There's no way all you do is work. You work all the time in trusteeship." First of all, yes, if you're managing your family estate, it's trusteeship. It's a lifestyle. So the lifestyle incorporates you not going on vacations, but business trips. Business trips do involve you, doing things in the public. Whether that's, you doing business at a theme park, you doing business at a water park, you doing business at a campgrounds, you doing business, at retreat sites. Though people say, "Oh man, I don't want to work." Yeah, that's what it is. They don't want to build generational wealth because when they find out that the number for generational wealth is over 25 to $50 million plus, oh wow, now you gotta do something. And it's not for everybody. Some people, we have people in our sector where, especially in the charitable foundation sector, where most people are just trying to pass assets from one generation to the next. They're trying to actually just protect assets. They're really, they say 80% of the population in our sector, at least in foundation sector, they're not overly growing their assets, and there's a certain amount that they just don't have in there, and that's fine. And that's 80% minimum. That most of them don't even have, more than 5 million plus dollars in them. And these are just stats that come from these publications from these organizations that deal with other charities and things of that nature, and they tell you they're more asset protection vehicles, things of that nature. So when you talk about uh, growing assets as a trustee, that's supposed to be their job. Period. Some people might try to say, well, okay, well, what if the trustee walks into a ton of cash? Can't they just manage it? Well, first of all, money is a commodity and it costs. It costs to sit somewhere. Like if you bought a fruit, the fruit's not going to stay good for long, so you have to do things to preserve it. Maybe you take seeds out of that fruit and you grow other fruit. That's why it's called seed capital. So the money is, you're very strategic. You're very focused on continuing education as a trustee. As a trustee, you're definitely focused as the trust is definitely always focused on getting the best talent that it can possibly get, and that means that you're one of the best and educated as one of the best in the field that you're in, particularly not just trusteeship, but the assets that the trust is managing. The reason why you probably have been appointed or elected as the trustee is because you're skilled. You have the skills to pay the bills for the trust lights to stay on. Whereas the employee, not to say that they don't have that. It's not to say, it's just one of those things where, for example, we'll get athletes. Athletes will come into the program, high, professional athletes. So they're employees, ladies and gentlemen, no doubt about it. If you don't know that, they're just high paid employees. They're actually high paid employees. Fine. So you get the high paid employees, but Okay, let's break this down for you all that don't know. When we're dealing with these internet, well, not internet, these NFL athletes, NBA athletes, whoever. Okay, bam. So they come in, but they got a financial advisor. The financial advisor was given to them as a conflict of interest through the league that they're associated with. So it's like your job, going into your job, and your job's got an internal financial advisement company that you can walk in and they have their own company name and you can go in there and they're going to give you financial advice. That's how that looks. So these guys and ladies, they will go. They're in the league. They hear about the vault. They hear about private trusteeship, and they say, "Okay, wow, I am an employee, and I'm a high net worth income earner, and I'm actually getting killed in taxes. I'm getting killed in a lot of liabilities." So they want to protect their assets for various reasons, ladies and gentlemen. So they say, "Okay, I want to protect my assets," but their financial advisor didn't put them in trust. See the difference? Now they have to be a trustee. They've been an employee, they got a financial advisor. The financial advisor didn't put them in trust. Sometimes they may try to talk to them or mention to them about the revocable, but for the most part, they don't. That's not a one size shoe fits all. That's fair. Whether you all know it or not, we've dealt with so many athletes at the vault. We actually know there are pain points for these athletes that these financial advisors are not solving. They're not solving these. They're letting them come into the league. Whether you all know it or not, there's crimes that have happened behind this stuff because these players aren't protected. Asset protection, not just on their life with the health, but the financial protection. They're employees and they're going from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. How do they get around that? Well, they seek asset protection outside of the cash that they're making, just like everybody else. The only difference is they have financial advisors. Uh, they have teams around them sometimes, people. Oh, I got a guy that manages my money or a girl or a lady that manages my money. Okay. So they got someone that manages their money. You know, oh, you come in once a month, we go over the P&L or we go over the P&L on Zoom or something like that. And if y'all really think, people that are listening to us, if you all really think that financial advisors are 100% the industry is truthful, that means that when they're sending these meetings, they're not stealing money from their employer, which is the employee. Well, the high paid athlete or whoever. What do you mean? Are you following the books that tight? Most of them aren't. Whether y'all know it or not, when these people are in season, there's hard to talk to these people. This is just being honest with you all. We have experienced this time and time again. So when they come in with an employee mindset, oh man, he's a high net worth or she's a high net worth income earner. How come she's not or he's not, so adept on money? Well, that's what they are. They're great athletes. They didn't say they were great with money. That's why they have a financial advisor. And then their financial advisor still is not, they're thinking like an employee. Oh, we'll just sit here and collect our 30% off of this guy, off or this lady, get the contract. We're the agent. We're going to read over the contracts. We're a halfway lawyer. Maybe they're not a lawyer. Maybe they're just a sports agent. And you didn't give your client wealth, asset management, preservation tools. Because you're laughing with them. You're chumming with them. And guess what? Financial advisors work for the athlete. They're employees. That's why they're acting like that. Most of them. They don't give asset protection. If they're going to put the athlete in a position of trusteeship, guess what? Who's going to manage it? The athlete? Or is it going to be what is it? The financial advisor. And you still have to have tools in place to make sure that this person is just doing their job. You have to even know what their job is in order for them to do their job properly so you can make sure that they're doing their job. This happens every day, ladies and gentlemen. People wonder why the athletes, they come into the program uh, and they may act like an employee. They do employee things. They're employees. When are they going to make the transition to just being A business person that's actually really gifted physically. It doesn't matter if you play the piano or if you hit somebody playing football. You're still gifted physically, which means you have some type of physical insurance on you. Trust family might have and physical insurance on you. Okay. And now we're talking about financial insurance. See, that trusteeship, that's the asset protection. The employee, they're out here naked. Got financial advisors sitting around them, just taking a check, collecting a check. Oh man, it doesn't matter if they're an athlete or not. What about the people that are working for you as your financial advisor? Are they calling you weekly with ideas and deals? Or when the market's good, they're calling. Hey, we need to go back. We're getting our money off of bonds now. Equities are rallying. It was supposed to be a recession. We don't really see it anymore. I've done enough public news watching. We might be out of the clear. Yeah, right. And then when the market's bad, the financial advisor won't pick up for your call. The 401ks that you put money into, they won't pick up. They put you on long holds. These people are holding your money. But that's the problem. They're holding your money. When it's in trusteeship, it's different. That's just the way it is. Business is different than personal. Always has been, always will be. It's a separation of what? Assets. It's a separation of liability. Appreciate Mississippi for tuning in live, listen, replay. Always appreciate Mississippi for tuning in live, listen, replay. We got Washington, Seattle, Washington, tuning in live, listen, replay. Always appreciate Seattle, Washington for tuning in live, listen, replay. Feel free to type into the chat where you tune in live and listen in from the replay from. Always appreciate it. This is the Vault episode 494, Trustee versus Employee. Definitely thankful for everybody tuning in live, listening to replay. Definitely hit the like and the subscribe button. It means a lot to the channel so we can continue to grow the channel and pump it up in the algorithm. So definitely hit the like and the subscribe for each episode. Always appreciate it. And this is just one of those things where we definitely had to highlight some key distinctions and points of interest where just to have a quality thought process, a quality conversation when people come and they're coming in for trustee training and they're asking questions. And we're making these episodes for trustees because we used to do Sunday trustee training. Now we'll just give it to the internet for free. But we still have people enrolling in trustee training. You can feel free to enroll. Christian at trustchristian.com. Christian at trustchristian.com. Always appreciate it. That's that. Trustee versus employee. It's a lot of distinctions, a lot of comparisons, a lot of things that we could talk about when it comes to these two different positions because trustees a lifestyle just like an employee's a lifestyle. Trustee has a long-term thought process. Employees might not have as long. There's a lot more flexibility to move around. Where not to say trustees don't have that flexibility, as trustees are just more long-term thinkers. They're more focused on growth and development over the long term, and that is staying in one position and just making it work, making it happen. Whereas employees don't always do that. They have the ability to leave because there is no responsibility outside of them to grow assets. They are the number one asset. The employee is the number one asset. The trustee is not the number one asset. If you understand trusteeship, one of the rules that we have in trusteeship is your greatest asset is not always your best asset. So if you're the only asset, you hear that? Employee, you're the number one asset. Right. Are you the trustee or just the number one asset? Trustees are not the number one asset. They manage assets. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Always appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Christian at trustchristian.com for trustee training. Christian at trustchristian.com.